are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast presented by Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. I am Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And today we're answering your Twitter questions. But before we do that, Landon, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Trying to avoid the droves of LA Rams fans that are excitedly scurrying around the city for their team, their big Super Bowl appearance at home. Everyone's excited. LA is all abuzz over no, I'm just kidding. They're talking about Oscar nominations and they don't really care about the Rams. So,
have you watched any of the Oscar nominated movies this year?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them. I'm trying to think of who they were. I just know that I just know that I looked at the list and I was like, yeah, seen that one.
I saw Don't Look Up, which is on Netflix,
yeah, okay.
Right?
Okay.
But this is the time of year where I dive really into the Oscar movies because I like to be prepared. So
yeah, I mean, this is the time to do it, right? To kind of get now the football season's a little bit over. You have a little bit more free time, so you try to dive into a couple of these movies that you may have missed during the regular season, and then after quickly binge watching all of them, try to make a decision on what you think is the best picture of the year. Much like we decide who we think the best players are in the draft process.
Yeah, as I say, when I tell you I'm going to be watching film over the weekend, you're not going to know whether it's of draft prospects or Oscar movies. Right. So
film will be watched. It's just of an indeterminate nature.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we got a lot of good Twitter questions to get to, but before we do that, I want to ask you about the Giants coaching hires over the last couple of weeks. So they hired Brian Daboll to be their head coach. They got Mike Kafka to be their offensive coordinator. And today they hired Don Wink Martindale to be their defensive coordinator. Got to admit, though, Landon, I think those are some pretty good hires they've had.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as far as names go. I mean, obviously Daboll was a guy that I had talked about wanting the Cowboys to potentially kick the tires on. So don't love that hire. I mean, for the Cowboys. The Martindale one is a good hire because I think he's a good defensive coordinator, but it doesn't quite strike the same fear in me as I think it would for other teams, because I do think that Wink is very well noted for being a blitz heavy defensive coordinator, and I think the Cowboys specifically do really well when teams blitz them. So I actually think that it's a good hire by the Giants. I think overall. But I think for the Cowboys specifically, it doesn't quite fear me as much as if they brought in Fangio or something like that.
Here's the thing: they had a good defensive coordinator last year, Patrick Graham.
Yeah, I liked Patrick Graham a lot.
I don't know if Wink is an upgrade on Graham. He might be a slight one, but it's really.
But it might be just a parallel move, right?
It might be a parallel move, but the offensive side is what makes me a little bit more nervous because Daboll and Kafka are going to be pretty good together. Still, it comes down to, do they figure out the quarterback thing? Can Daboll turn Daniel Jones into the next Josh Allen? I have my doubts, but it's a pretty good coaching staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we appropriately lambaste them when they make poor decisions. Mm-hmm. We shrug and let it go when they make the really good ones we don't like. So we're shrugging and letting it go.
That's fine. All right, let's get to your questions. I love this first question. This one's just right up your alley. It's from Ali. He wants to know, could we talk about why I'm still upset after that playoff game and why everyone's excited that things are staying exactly the same? I'm so tired of the same. My only hope is that we get into Kobe Dean and the attitude of this team completely changes. I can't read the rest of the tweet, but it's something similar to that. So what are your thoughts? Why are people so excited that things are staying the same?
Well, look, I mean, I certainly empathize with what this guy's saying. I mean, I think he's kind of mirroring a lot of what I expressed at the end of the playoff run. And right after that game was over, is that, it just felt like the changes that needed to be made at the end of the season to get this team ready to play in the playoffs just never happened. Mm-hmm. And so if the question is, what do I have to look forward to when we are bringing back more of the same? Look, first of all, I think the key thing to remember when involving optimism or pessimism towards an NFL season is to focus on the fact that every year, we talk about how the NFL season is unpredictable.
Mhm.
And it always manages to be unpredictable in ways that we, despite our many guesses as to way to predict things, it always finds a ways to flummox us. So I think that the idea that you're going to get similar or exact same results just because you have the same coaching staff, I mean, that I understand that thought process, but I don't know that that necessarily is true. I think that there is opportunity for growth. I think there's also an opportunity for the fact that the Cowboys had some injuries, including to Dak, that may have caused issues down the stretch that they were not just able to recover from in time. That I think that, if with a little bit healthier Dak,
we'll get to that question later. Don't worry.
A little bit of that kind of a little bit of changed angles and things, there is opportunity here. And again, like these NFL seasons are wide open. I totally understand the questioner's thought process, more of the same. How is that going to be better? But this is a very young team still with a very young coach at offensive coordinator who is growing himself. So I think there is opportunity for growth and change there. And I do think that there is something to the idea that change is not always good. Change is not always better. It's not always greener on the other side of the pasture.
I do want to point out, this is me being optimistic, Marcus, again.
Here we go. Everybody gets their tape recorders ready.
Listen, this team was really good during the regular season. They were 12-5, number 2 in point differential, number 1 in DVOA. Just because they had a bad game in the playoffs doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to change, right? Like, this team was good. And if everything is the same, listen, I think you and I would sign up for another 12-5 season next year and get another crack at trying to make the Super Bowl, right? Like, that's okay.
I think part of the formula of disappointment is to have the excitement up front, right? If you didn't feel like this was a good team at the beginning of the season, then you wouldn't feel as disappointed at the end of the season when they didn't do it. So the point is that talent is there enough to do something. It's just that they need to avail themselves of that at the end of the year.
It reminds me of the 2018 season, which was the opposite, right? They started out so poorly. They were 3-5 or whatever, and they went on a run and they made the playoffs and they got knocked out in the second round. We felt better about the team probably coming out of that stretch than we did, out of this game, even though they were much more consistent in the regular season. But here's the other thing that we have to realize about the NFL. How many teams after the Super Bowl is over are happy with the way their season turned out and played out?
This is what I've been banging on. If all of your happiness is hinging on the fact that whether or not your team won the Super Bowl or not, that's like playing Russian roulette with like 32 bullets. It's like 31 bullets.
I think here's the thing: if the Bengals win the Super Bowl, I think the Rams are going to be really disappointed on how the season turned out. Right? You gave up all these assets and you didn't win a Super Bowl. Now if it's flipped the other way and the Rams win, I think you could talk yourself into this being a really successful season for the Bengals. But most teams aren't happy with the way the season ended. It's just kind of the life of the NFL. And you're right. Like, you have to enjoy the ups and downs of the season. But at the same time, we are a little bit disappointed that it didn't end up the way that we were hoping. I don't know if they needed a huge amount of change this offseason. I think this team is good enough to at least give it one more run before tearing everything down.
Yeah, I mean, look, I certainly, like I said, I think with Kellen Moore, you have an opportunity to grow a little bit more there. I think if we had the chance to run this back and then kind of replay that whole playoff game and last end of the season, we would take that opportunity. Especially with maybe like, a different set of injuries or, whatever, a different set of circumstances. I think things could have, played out in a different way. So there are lots of teams out there in the NFL that are heading into much, much worse situations going into the offseason. So let's keep that in mind.
New Orleans? Just thinking about some of the other contenders. Tampa Bay?
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but our good friend Luke from Locked On Vikings took a picture of him and Peter and Ross all together. He's like, me and my the 7 and 10 teams hanging out, singing. as the two hosts of the new Locked On Saints and Locked On Packers shows were with him. Look, I mean, there's a lot of unknown. There's going to be a lot of turnover. There's going to be a lot of change in this offseason.
Especially in the NFC.
It's really hard to kind of even guesstimate where the Cowboys are in the pantheon of things with the way they are right now. So I think you can't be. They didn't have the worst situation. They didn't maybe get the best situation that everybody wanted, but they certainly didn't hit worst case scenario with their coaching hires and everything. So we got to play this out and just see how it goes.
All right, let's take a quick break so we can tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as we get to the Super Bowl here later this week. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new and amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. We also want to tell you guys about Get Upside. Our listeners are earning cash back for every single gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code Touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code Touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making like $200, $300 a year just by using cash back. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. All right, next question. And this is a really good one that I was thinking about today. It comes from Eamon. He wants to know, the Cowboys have been an offensive team for years. How would you feel if they used all of their assets and investments this offseason to become a defensive first team with Dan Quinn back?
I think it would be a very poor idea. I think you don't know that Dan Quinn's going to be with your team beyond this next season. Defense is inherently very difficult to replicate.
It is.
Even when you have a stable force at defensive coordinator, I don't even know that we can be certain that the Cowboys are going to be able to replicate anything like they did this year next year.
I would expect a major regression next year, even if the talent is as good, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not saying this for a foregone conclusion, but you certainly shouldn't count on being able to replicate this type of defense year in and year out. Almost no one can do that. So I would say you kind of continue to reload on defense, continue to reshape, get yourself in a situation where you feel that your defense is versatile, it can do the things you want, and that it can play complementary to what your offense is doing. But I just feel like, you can try to do your best to make the defense as good as it can, and you can invest a lot if you would like. But I think trying to, center the gravity of what this team is trying to do on solely playing good defense, and then, which usually translates into meaning to play more run on the offensive side to kind of complement that. I think that's a poor idea. I think that you'll see that there are very few teams in the NFL that can consistently win that way. Yep. And the one that beat the Cowboys had, an ungodly type of run game that was called, historically famous, and a defense that was heating up at the right time. So I think the formula, if you're trying to build long-term consistency and a winner for long periods of time, multiple seasons, is to try to, create a very difficult to stop offense, and then try to keep those pieces in place as long as you can, and then just reload the defense as best you can.
Yeah, I saw a good tweet today, and I can't remember who it was from, but basically 19 of the last 22 Super Bowl participants all had a top 10 offense. It's
was it Wade Phillips?
Well, yeah, but Wade Phillips didn't put out the tweet. I saw Wade Phillips' response. It said, so defenses don't win championships, huh? And the truth is, anymore, not really. And even that team that, that Wade Phillips was on, that had a number one ranked defense, they had Peyton freaking Manning as their head coach, or as their quarterback, right? Like,
more head coach.
Well,
maybe a little bit.
I mean, you just have to have a good offense. It doesn't have to be the number one. It doesn't even have to be number 5 or whatever. But I don't think you're going to see a team win a Super Bowl with the number 1 ranked defense and the number 18 ranked offense, right? It's just probably not going to happen anymore.
I just don't know that you're going to have markedly better success on defense while solely focusing on trying to create a number 1 defense versus building naturally through the draft and adding pieces as you can. Because defense is just so hard to predict. And again, defense, statistically, the things that we kind of judge a defense on, a lot of it is mostly dictated by the offenses they're playing as opposed to how well they're playing. That's just the nature of the NFL. Offense is what stirs the drink here.
Now, that's not to say the Cowboys can't have a defensive-centric offseason where they use a majority of their picks on defense like they did last year, right? Like, how many of their first picks were on defense last year? It was Micah Parsons, Calvin Joseph, Osa Odighizuwa, Chauncey Golson, Nashawn Wright, Jabril Cox. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we have something similar this offseason, but I'm not gutting my offense to add more defensive guys, if that makes sense.
Let's put it this way. You had a solid defense at the end of the year. Your offense kind of had tailed off. The priority, without a doubt, has got to be to get the offense back to where it was going. The defense, trying to chase that dragon is more fruitless. It's going to be more difficult, and it's not guaranteed to happen. If you can get the offensive line back in shape, if you can get blocking back in shape, if you can get a run game back going, you can get an offense right back to where it was. I think that's been shown over and over again. Whereas defense, it's a little bit of a more tricky situation. It's a little bit more difficult to replicate.
Would you still spend a lot of your picks on defense this year just to improve the depth? Because I do think that's what matters a lot on defense, is having 19 to 20 guys that you feel really good about.
I just because, the Cowboys are going to lose a lot of guys on that side of the ball. I think that the Cowboys should continue to invest there. But not at the at the detriment to the offense. There is things that needs to be fixed in the offense, that has to be kind of the priority. And then, it doesn't mean that you can't spend a large number, an even larger number than you do on offense, on defense. It's just that you need to make sure that the offense is squared away first.
I agree. All right, let's do this question. If Amari Cooper gets traded or released, is there a free agent wide receiver out there that you could sign? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and eliminate the big guys. Like, they're not going to go out and sign Devontae Adams or Allen Robinson. That's a lateral move at best, and you're not going to do that. However, there are some guys out there that I think could work in combination with CeeDee Lamb. So let's just run through some names. You tell me yes or no, and if you can expand on it if you want. Christian Kirk.
Kirk's an interesting name, has kind of some of that stuff that I think he would be a good fit with what you've got, right? Mm-hmm. You'd like to see somebody who's a little bit more established, but again, that's kind of what you're paying for at that rate. So I think Christian Kirk is a name to keep in mind for sure.
Okay. Mike Williams is probably going to be too much. Chris Godwin is probably going to be too much. Odell Beckham, I don't think the Cowboys probably want to worry about that, right?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money, and you need someone solid in production at this point, like reliable. And,
Emmanuel Sanders has been a name that's kind of been whispered around the Cowboys for a while, but he's going to be 35 this offseason, probably past the point where you want to bring him in, correct?
Yeah, I mean, because at a certain point, the speed is really kind of what you're hoping for, and at that age, I think he can still play the position. It's just I don't know that he's going to run past people the way he used to.
Sammy Watkins, 29.
I mean, Sammy Watkins seems like going to be more expensive because CeeDee Lamb's on his rookie contract version and less talented version of CeeDee Lamb. So I don't know. No. I think if you're gonna go out and get somebody, I want somebody who's different, right? Like I need a different body style, almost someone who's gonna maybe stretch the offense a little bit more.
Marcus Valdez-Scantling.
Maybe. I mean, he's again similar, right? Like, I mean, again, I maybe.
Okay.
Depending on what the number was.
Juju Smith-Schuster, who mentioned he would like to play with the Cowboys.
Smith-Schuster doesn't kind of fall into the category of what I was just talking about.
No, he doesn't.
Player. He's definitely not a burner. Yeah, but he is kind of like a big target who can play slot. He can get open. I think he can catch the ball. He could be a reliable source, I think, for this offense if he can, get the kind of matchups you want. But I mean, I don't know that I'm going to pay him a ton of money, which is probably what he's going to get because of all the production he's had at different points in his career.
It's a very interesting wide receiver class. I'm going to say a name, and I don't want you to laugh. Okay, I promise this is an actual option, and this guy might get paid. Laquan Treadwell.
You say Laquan Treadwell?
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, after basically being asleep for the first 4 or 5 years of his career, it sounds like, I mean, from what I remember, he kind of had a little resurgence near the end of the
65
last year.
yards a game in the second half of the season.
I mean, it really kind of showed up. So
that's a no, because it's the same, right?
I mean, again,
it's kind of bigger receiver that doesn't scare teams on the field.
I mean, here's a guy that is like injured a lot, but honestly, this is what you're going to run into a lot with these guys. Someone like Will Fuller, someone like, I mean,
that's a good one. I got another one. DJ Chark, who played a few games last year. He might get more money than the Cowboys are willing to offer, but he's only played a handful of games over the last 2 seasons, but he can stretch the field. He was a 30 visit by the Cowboys.
Does T.Y. Hilton still have anything left?
No, probably not.
Probably not. Okay.
I mean, Will Fuller's interesting. I like that name because you could probably get him for a few million a season. And when he plays, he's going to give you a vertical element. However, we talked about this yesterday, though, Landon. Like, does Dak even want to throw down the sidelines 30, 40, 50 yards down the field? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a question that we have to be able to go up and ask Dak himself. So that we'll leave that one to Will McClay.
I mean, he's never really been a guy that wants to throw vertically unless it's to a go up and get it guy like Michael Gallup, but it's something to maybe keep an eye on. All right, one more quick break to tell you guys about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock up on all the parts you need. Rock Auto has everything you need, from engine control modules, brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Best of all, prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low and the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, let's finish up with some questions. A couple of people wanted to know, Dak Prescott declined his invite for the Pro Bowl. Do you think he was more injured than the Cowboys officials wanted to let on?
It's something that I had been thinking about for a while because it just seemed like it. I mean, look, it's hard to deny the statistical, drop off that happened after the calf injury, right? After that New England game. And another part of the issue that made it kind of, difficult to diagnose, I guess, or at least to kind of solely blame, some issues on that is that happened right around the time that the bye week happened, right around the time that they did the shuffle on the offensive line. So it kind of got, muddied a little bit by that. But I mean, I have to think it must have been more severe, at least than they wanted to talk about, simply because of the fact that I really felt like part of the reason they struggled with some of those too high defenses later in the season is that they were struggling to run the football, which was especially, kind of creating those explosive plays that they wanted, especially once Pollard got injured, right?
Yep.
And then, the other thing that could have really helped there is a little bit more of Dak running the football, right? And just because they're playing everybody up tight, Dak getting 5 and 6 yards on a second down pass that would normally fall incomplete is a much better result, especially against a team that's trying to keep everything in front of you than just taking an incompletion pass. And it just felt like Dak was not interested in doing that after the injury, and it certainly felt like the Cowboys were not interested in running any of the kind of very much, at least, of the option game stuff that
Yep.
I expected. That's really the kind of thing that I really expected to start showing up near the end of the season, right? Is that I thought, okay, they're saving this until they absolutely need it. Now we're in the last games of the playoff of the season. We're in the playoffs, and we're still not really seeing it. We saw a little bit of it, but it was only as absolutely needed. So
Yeah.
I have to think, we that combined with the fact that every single week after the games, we would watch the tape, and they just basically stopped doing, or it certainly stopped having success on any of the kind of naked bootlegs, waggle passes, stuff that had really worked well for them. And that has everything to do with the kind of throw that Dak is making, throwing off that one calf, much like he did when he hurt himself. So I have to believe that there is something there, and that clearly Dak, his body must have been exhausted from. I mean, think about all the rehab he was doing up until the season, then playing a regular season of football. It may be just time that he needs to let his body rest at this point.
I heard some whispers that he re-injured the calf against the Chiefs, and then because they had those 3 games right in a row, he never really got a chance to get healthy. So they really limited the number of play action stuff and rollout stuff. And I went back and just to double check, and that's true. You could look at like throwing on the run numbers, and they basically got rid of them all until the end of the season. Like week 16, he started to get healthier, and we saw that reflected in his play. Like last 3 games of the season, like the regular season, he had a passer rating of 133. He had 12 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, and he finally started to look healthy again. And then they just ran into a good 49ers team. They just didn't play well that game. So I think Dak did get healthier as the season went along. I just don't think he had any interest in playing in a Pro Bowl game, even if he was 95% healthy. There was really no reason for it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like I said, I mean, think about it from Dak's point of view. I mean, he has basically been working nonstop since, really since training camp of last season, right? Because he goes into training camp last season, plays a couple games, gets injured. Now he's, surgery, and then it's just a sprint of a recovery workout to get it healthy in time for the regular season. Then he gets to the regular season, deals with injury. So honestly, I think there is something to the idea that your body needs to rest and recover from your recovery, and I think honestly, it could be, we may look back at Jalen Smith and say that may have been ultimately what his undoing was, right? Is that he worked so hard to kind of get back to a spot where he could play at the level that he played at, 2018? And then whatever that did to his body regressed him to the point where he can never get back to that point. It took such a monumental effort to get him that way. So Dak may be dealing with a similar situation where his body's just tired after having to do all that, and he just needs the time to kind of recover.
And we talked about at the beginning of the show, like why is staying the same might be good for the Cowboys. The right answer might just be, if Dak is 100% healthy next year, and you see, because we saw it in spurts last year, right? Like 3 or 4 game sample sizes where he looked incredible, and you just wondered, like, between the ankle, between the shoulder, between the calf, like how healthy was he really at any point in the season? If he comes into next year 100% healthier, looks quicker because he has, a year and a half off because of the ankle, maybe that's all the Cowboys need to take the next step.
I mean, yeah, honestly, like that's enough to be the difference between, what happened last year and what could happen, you hope, in the future. And that, maybe that extra knowledge this is something we always have to consider with these teams, right? They know more than we do, or at least they have more information than we do, right?
Yep.
So if they have that knowledge that Dak was not, was playing at 75% for, for the third quarter of the season last year, right? There may be a thought process like, hey, if we just have a Dak who's not dealing with this calf and shoulder injury the latter part of the season, this whole thing might have been quite different. You may get the number 1 seed. You may get a better opportunity. And look, we lost at home in the playoff game. There's no way around that. But you hope that maybe this team would be able to find its rhythm a little bit better, through that latter part of the season, and be more prepared to go into the playoffs.
I'm just going to pull up Dak's game logs right here from before the injury. So the first 6 games of the season, he had a passer rating of 115. He was averaging over 8.5 yards per attempt during that stretch. If you can get that for a whole season, this team is probably the 1 seed.
Yeah, and the injury that he had was, fluky. It was like he pulled it. He's dealing with the ankle coming off of that, and then he pulls it, kind of throwing off of that foot off of really deep pass rolling out right. So, if he just can get all the way back to closer to healthy, closer, another year off away from that injury, which hopefully will make him less injury prone in that spot. There's certainly tons of hope here. It's not like, again, I think people are still just on the other side of the playoff loss. I understand. I'm still pissed about it too. But I don't think that we can assume this isn't year 8 of Jason Garrett, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't like where we've been doing this forever and ever and ever. Like, this is, the second year that we've had an opportunity. This will be the third year that we've had an opportunity for Dak fully unleashed with Kellen. And really last year was injury, and the year before that dealt with injuries too. So
we'll see. All right, we're gonna answer some more of these questions tomorrow because we only got to through 3 today.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
so that's all right.
That's me too.
We're gonna get to some more though. So if you have some questions, please send them in to us. We're gonna do our best to answer more tomorrow. Download the show wherever you get your podcasts: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Follow the show on YouTube. We're putting out videos every single day there. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you next time.